Hello everyone. Today we will continue with the cerebellum. So today we are going to take first the morphological divisions of the cerebellum, right? Yesterday we have seen the different parts of the cerebellum, right? Now in the morphological division, first is the archicerebellum, second is the paleocerebellum, and third is the neocerebellum. Archicerebellum, it is the oldest part of the cerebellum and it is made up of the flocculonodular lobe and the lingula, right? It is chiefly vestibular in its connections. It controls the axial musculature and the bilateral movements used for locomotion and maintenance of equilibrium. Second is the paleocerebellum. It is the next part of the cerebellum to appear. It is made up of the anterior lobe except lingula, right? This anterior lobe except the lingula, and also the pyramid and the uvula of the inferior vermis. Its connections are chiefly spinocerebellar. It controls tone, posture and the crude movements of the limbs. Next is the neocerebellum. It is the newest part of the cerebellum to develop. It is made up of middle lobe, that is the largest part of the cerebellum, this, except for the pyramid and the uvula of the inferior vermis, right? They are not involved in the neocerebellum. It is chiefly corticocerebellar in connections and is primarily concerned with the regulation of the fine movements of the body. Okay, so this is the morphological division of the cerebellum, like archicerebellum, paleocerebellum and neocerebellum. Now functionally again the cerebellum is divided. We will see another diagram for this. In this diagram you can see functionally the anterior and the posterior lobes, they are organized into three longitudinal zones, right? You can see this is the lateral zone, this is the intermediate zone and this is the vermis, right? So only the anterior and the posterior lobes, they are organized into three longitudinal zones. In this, the lateral zone, it is connected with the association areas of the brain and is involved in planning and programming the muscular activities. The intermediate zone, it is concerned with the control of the muscles of the hands, fingers, feet and toes, right? So that is the distal parts of the body. And the vermis is concerned with the control of the muscles of the trunk, neck, shoulders and hips. So this is about the anterior and the posterior lobes. Now the flocculonodular zone, right? This you can see in functionally. This lobe functions with the vestibular system in controlling the equilibrium of the body. Okay, so this is the functional division of the cerebellum. Next we will see the different connections of the cerebellum, right? That we will see through one table. Okay. Here in this table you can see the fibers that are entering or leaving the cerebellum, they are grouped to form the three cerebellar peduncles, right, which connect the cerebellum with the midbrain, pons and medulla, right? We have done about the cerebellar peduncles with the different parts of the brainstem, right? So here we can see the superior cerebellar peduncle, it connects the cerebellum to the midbrain. The middle cerebellar peduncle connects the cerebellum to the pons, and inferior cerebellar peduncle, it connects the cerebellum to the medulla oblongata. Now here we will see the tracts that are afferent tracts and some are the efferent tracts, right? So through the superior cerebellar peduncle, the afferent tracts are anterior spinocerebellar and tectocerebellar. The efferent tracts are cerebellorubral, dentatothalamic, dentato-olivary and fastigioreticular. In the middle cerebellar peduncle, you will find only one afferent tract that is present, pontocerebellar, that is the part of the cortico-pontocerebellar pathway. Next is the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Here there are 9 afferent tracts that you will find. First is the posterior spinocerebellar, then cuneo-cerebellar, that is posterior external arcuate fibers, olivocerebellar, parolivocerebellar, reticulocerebellar, vestibulocerebellar, anterior external arcuate fibers, stria medullaris, and trigeminocerebellar. The efferent tracts with the inferior cerebellar peduncle are cerebellovestibular, cerebello-olivary and cerebello-reticular. Right? Now it is clear from this table that the middle and the inferior cerebellar peduncles, they are chiefly afferent to the cerebellum, and the superior cerebellar peduncle is chiefly efferent in nature. Right? So this is about the connections of the cerebellum to the brainstem through the cerebellar peduncles, and you can also see the afferent and the efferent tracts in this table. Okay. Next is the grey matter. Yes, in this diagram you will see the, as we have seen different parts of the grey matters in the brainstem, similarly here also we will see grey matter. It consists of the cerebellar cortex, one you can see, and there are the 4 pairs of the nuclei that you will find here. First, the nucleus dentatus, you can see the dentate nuclei or the nucleus dentatus. It is the largest nuclei you can see here, and it is a part of the neocerebellum. The nucleus globusus and the nucleus emboliformis, right? Or you can also call it as the globus nucleus and emboliform nucleus, right? These two, they are the part of paleocerebellum. The nucleus fastigi, this one, it is the part of the archicerebellum, right? Why I am telling you the morphological division? Because you can understand the function of the nuclei. So these are the parts of the grey matter that you will find in the cerebellum, right? 4 types of the nuclei you have to remember: dentate nucleus, emboliformis and the globus nuclei, and the nuclei fastigi. Next is the blood supply of the cerebellum, right? For that we will see one more diagram. Now here in this diagram you will see that cerebellum is supplied by 2 superior cerebellar arteries, 2 anterior inferior cerebellar arteries and 2 posterior inferior cerebellar arteries, right? Here you can see the basilar artery. Basilar artery is formed by the union of the 2 vertebral arteries, right? We have seen the basilar artery in the pons on the basilar sulcus, if you remember, right? Now here Basilar artery gives two branches. One is the superior cerebellar artery and another is the anterior inferior cerebellar arteries, right? Both the sides, so there are two. And this posterior inferior cerebellar artery, it is a branch of the vertebral artery. Veins, they will drain into the neighboring venous sinuses. Okay, so that is about the chief blood supply of the cerebellum. Next, the most important part is the function of the cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum controls the same side of the body, that is, its influence is ipsilateral, right? Till now, we have seen in the brainstem and other parts that the function is contralateral, but in contrast with those parts, the cerebellum controls the same side of the body, so its influence is ipsilateral, right? The cerebellum coordinates the voluntary movements so that they are smooth, balanced and accurate, and this is chiefly done by the neocerebellum. The cerebellum controls the tone, posture and equilibrium. This is chiefly done by the archicerebellum and the paleocerebellum. Vermal part controls the axial muscles and thus maintains posture. Paramedian areas are involved in control of the distal group of the muscles to bring the smooth coordinated activity. Cerebellum functions as a comparator. It receives information from the cerebrum and spinal cord. It connects and modifies the ongoing movements through the thalamocortical projections, reticulospinal and the rubrospinal tracts, right? So it is receiving, why it is working as a comparator? Because it is receiving information from both cerebrum and the spinal cord. Neocerebellum is responsible for the fine tuning of the motor performances or for the precise movements. It helps in planning and production of the skilled movements along with the cerebrum. Flocculonodular lobe is connected to the vestibular nuclei. It is involved in the maintenance of the muscle tone and posture. Spinocerebellum, vermis and intermediate regions receive afferents from the motor cortex via corticopontocerebellar fibers. All the sensory information of the muscles, joints, cutaneous, auditory and visual parts are relayed here. Spinocerebellar tracts carry information from the same side. It has been seen by the functional magnetic resonance imaging that if the fingers of the right hand are moved repetitively, the activity is seen in the precentral gyrus of the left cerebral cortex and in the anterior quadrangular lobe of the right cerebellar hemisphere, right? So it signifies that the cerebellum is ipsilateral in function. Okay, so that is about the functions of the cerebellum. Now the last part is the applied anatomy. Here you can see the cerebellar dysfunction, right? In the cerebellar dysfunction, you will see that the vermis lesions lead to the truncal ataxia as the connection of the vermis to the vestibular nuclei are involved, right? So, if vermis is involved, then you will find the truncal ataxia. Why? Because it is related to the vestibular nuclei, which functions in maintaining the equilibrium of the body, right? So, equilibrium is disturbed, so you will have the ataxia. Next is the nystagmus. It is due to the loss of the labyrinthine connections of the vermis to the labyrinth. Vermis is also related to the emotions, right? This also you have to remember that vermis is related to the emotions, and nystagmus is the to and fro constant movement, oscillatory movement of the eyeball. Anterior lobe lesions. Lesions of the anterior lobe causes gait ataxia. There is incoordination of the lower limb resulting in the staggering gait and inability to walk in a straight line. It is same as alcoholics, right? If a person consumes excessive quantity of the alcohol, then the way he walks, similarly you will find the incoordination in the anterior lobe lesions. Then next is the neocerebellar lesions. In the neocerebellar lesions, this lesions causes incoordination of the voluntary movements of the upper limbs. It results in the intention tremor, action tremors, and the overshoot movements, right? Now, intention tremor means if a person is intending to do any activity, at that time only he will have tremors, otherwise not. Similarly, the action tremors. And overshoot movements means the patient is, there is a lack of the coordination in the movement, right, which is typified by the overshoot of the intended position with the arm, leg, eye, or the hand, right? Means a person is not able to judge the distance or the scale, right? He is doing some extra movement, that is called as the overshoot movement. Next is the speech. Speech is also defective. Phonation is defective due to the loss of the smoothness in the expiratory muscles. Articulation is defective as there is less coordination between the muscles of the lip, tongue, and palate, right? And the most important part in the clinical anatomy, you will find that if there is a thrombosis of one of the 6 arteries nurturing the cerebellum, right, that we have seen in the blood supply of the cerebellum, then the cerebellum cognitive affective syndrome will develop. Okay, and these patients, they show inattention, grammatical errors in the speech, and the patchy memory loss. Involvement of the vermis results in the dulling of the emotional response, as we have seen that vermis is related to the emotions, and it is characterized by, right, so means this syndrome, cerebellum cognitive affective syndrome, it is characterized by first muscular hypotonia, right? Then comes intention tremors, that is tremors only during the movements tested by finger, nose, and the heel knee test, that is the intentionally done test. Then adidokokinesia, which is inability to perform the rapid and regular alternating movements like pronation and supination. Nystagmus is the to and the fro oscillatory movements of the eyeballs while looking to the either side. Scanning speech is jerky and explosive speech, and ataxia or unsteady gait, right? So this all are the symptoms that you will find in this syndrome. Okay, so that is all about the applied anatomy of the cerebellum. We end with the cerebellum here. Goodbye.